Okay, so this is like a simple level I put together in like FLAX Engine. It's a really amazing engine. But I'm not sure how far I'm going to go with this. This is just sort of like a glass ceiling with a bit of a texture on it, and then you can like go into the level, and there's a camera here that has basically a rigid body, some like physics simulations, and then like a sphere collider, so it can't just go through stuff. And then this is something like a sort of like a padded test room, demo room somehow, for like seeing if you can like make something like this work. And when you press play, you go into something like you can look with the mouse, and if you press forward, it sort of like flies in the direction of the mouse, and if you push backwards, it sort of like flies backwards. And then there are these rods, or whatever you call them here. You can like knock them over. Something like a simple video game, and how you like build that, and like I said, you can't go through the walls, and there's some settings, so you can sort of like you're like stuck in this room, and you can like try and like solve these puzzles here if you could do that. So for now, that's that. And to make this in FLAX Engine, though it might look quite difficult to like start with, you basically just have to like make this. And here there is these here. If the W key, or like forward key, is pressed, it just in a sense starts moving the camera, the rigid body, in the direction that it's pointing, or like forward. And if you press S or backwards, you can see here it says plus 140. Instead of like moving forward, it moves the same. It moves sort of like you say backward, but it instead of like going the direction forward, it goes minus 140. That this is a movement speed sort of, so it just sort of like starts reversing and going backwards. So these boxes here are actually quite simple. If a button is pressed, start moving in the forward direction, and these boxes here sort of do that. I don't know if we can like add a comment here, and so oops, here, come on, comment, and we just move it. Let's move it here. I guess here. Here. Oops. So this makes it a bit easier to read. We can make it like this, and we write movement. Let's see here. Movement calculations. I don't know. So now we can like see here the movement calculations, what that is. Then this here, let's just move this down a bit. These two here, in a sense, gets the position and then rotates them around the mouse axis. So basically, if I move the mouse in the X direction or left and right, it sort of like rotates in that around that axis, around, in a sense. It basically just sort of like is what makes the depending on if it's all like you can see here that it rotates around this angle if it's the left right mouse button movement, and if it's up down mouse button movement, it doesn't rotate around this angle, but this angle here. The one is here in the first field, and it's like in the second field here. So it's like a very simple way of just making, in a sense, sure that the mouse rotates as were the character. And then that's sort of like how you sort of like create that. It's just I think that there is what do we do here? We just add some colors here, and it's just and here we call it mouse rotation math. Mouth rotation. Oops, here mouse rotation logic. Let's just call it that. and that looks like that. And just sort of like now we can just take this here. Let's just move it here, and whoa, whoa, whoops. Apparently these boxes. Let's see here, and so that was a bit of editing here. So I think like something like this. Okay. So these boxes aren't really supposed to overlap. So for now we can just sort of like move this here, so it's a bit easier to see, sort of like how this works. And then here, what it does is because there was an error somehow where the x-axis it started like rotating in like a weird way, something like spinning almost, instead of like just moving up and down and left and right because of the mouse. And the only way to like prevent that, from what I could make sense, was simply to lock one of the rotation axes here. So I basically take the two rotation axes that are here. Let's see. And these Euler angles, these three angles here, I unpacked the two that I want to rotate around, and then the in a sense I put it back into a vector where I constantly make sure that this here is like 0. So instead of like, because somehow when I started rotating the mouse and so on, it also started affecting the last in a sense you can see the last vector here, so that the camera sort of started doing something like this, and it sort of like wasn't supposed to happen. So it just sort of like whenever something happens in the video game where I move the mouse and so on, I just make sure that this is set back to 0. So this is like constantly 0. So that's basically all that happens here. So let's just add a comment here. So we just add this here, and move this here. So FLAX Engine is quite easy to work with, and to give you like an idea of like how you make this script. And the last thing is down here is a simple script or some code. You can see these boxes run the code in the video game, you could say, that makes sure that if I'm pressing none of the buttons, if WASD all are false, or it's true that all of them aren't being pressed, then it just sets the speed to 0. So it's basically a way of making sure that if I press play and I press a button, then it moves forward, and if I press S, it moves backwards. But if I let go of W and S and A and D, all the keys, it just sort of like stops moving. So it's basically the brake or something like to disable movement if I'm not pressing any buttons. So that's all like quite simple, and it's all like the stuff that happens down here. And then we like see if we can add a, but I don't think that's necessary. So it's just like an exclusion or something like that. And these two boxes here, they take the first box here, make sure that the cursor, whenever I press play, is like centered in the middle of the screen, so that I can't move the cursor. For instance, I can hit the wall, or in a sense the screen here, and then you can't move further. It just sort of like locks the cursor right in the middle of the screen. And the second here just makes the cursor like invisible. So you can't set cursor visible to like false, so that you can't see the so it has the effect that the mouse, as it were, stays in the center, directly of the center of the screen, and if it didn't, it could sort of like drift and hit the wall, and suddenly you couldn't turn. So that's sort of like a simple video game that I created like in FLAX Engine, and you can like see here again, you can like fly around, and it sort of like works like that, and you can hit something, and you can knock things over. And I'm not really sure. You can perhaps add some doors and some more corridors and so on. And you can't fly through the roof, for instance. And there's a wall here, and looks a bit like a padded room, like in an asylum, or something like where it's like a test room and something like not much could go wrong, something like a crash test dummy room, you could say. And that's all that. So you can make some really cool stuff in FLAX Engine. It's actually quite easy, and you can like add stuff and graphics and effects and particle systems and post processing and all kinds of stuff and animations to something like to a level like this, and sort of like start creating something really nice if you want to. And yeah, and then you have to like learn code and how stuff works in FLAX Engine, how you import and create materials and 3D objects and work with animations and all kinds of stuff. There's quite a bit more to the engine, but they have like an official web page and some forums where you can ask them questions. And last, they have the official documentation. Let's see if we can find it where. Here we click FLAX Engine. They have the official documentation where you can click here and you can like see, for instance, graphics. How do you work with the graphics, and they will like explain stuff to you how that works. Let's see here. How do you, for instance, how do you use the editor? How do you build and publish video games? How do you deal with the buttons and all kinds of stuff? If you want to add a terrain, how do you add a terrain and foliage to terrain? And again, how physics works in the engine. So there's like a ton of nice resources here, how particles work, and even like networking if you want to make multiplayer video games and stuff like that. So there's like a ton of stuff here, and how audio works, for instance, animations and scripting. Scripting is code. This is like, in a sense, an introduction to how like code works. So there's a ton of resources if you don't know how to use the engine, and that's all of that. It's a really cool engine. It runs really well, and it's rather fun to use. And then yeah, that's all like how you make a simple video game in FLAX Engine. So you fly around, and there's some collision and some stuff happens, and that's all that. Thank you. Bye.